Terraria was released on May 16, 2011. Since then, it's been ported to every imaginable platform, with its final update coming out on the game's 9-year anniversary. Honestly, you could probably play it on the Nintendo Virtual Boy at this point, but I digress. Over those 9 long years, the game has been crafted into so much more. It wouldn't be hyperbole to say that this game is a masterpiece. The sound designs of this game perfectly match up with the graphics and feel of it. There's a certain nostalgia to the sounds of drinking a potion or eating a pie. Everything from squishing a bug to blowing up a bomb just screams Terraria, and I honestly don't know if they could have done it any better. Every sound from the game has been ingrained into my head through countless hours of play, and none of them ever got annoying. But those are just the sound effects. What about one of the main aspects that you think of when it comes to sound design? Music. It just works. The music perfectly matches with the game's atmosphere, from those tense boss fights to the leisurely exploration. While it isn't something you just play because you love music, such as with a game like Mario Galaxy's orchestrated soundtrack, it is something that blends into the background and gives the game a special charm. When heard, it can take you back to all the memorable times you had when playing the game. I personally love Terraria's soundtrack because it just fits the game so well, but I will admit it isn't perfect, because it doesn't have the jammer quality that you would just want to listen to again and again, but it just works. Oddly enough, it has been done in mods. At first glance, Terraria's visuals may seem underwhelming, and to be fair, they kind of are, but they are simple enough to understand at a glance, and when the game can get as hectic as this, well, let's just say it's a good thing the visuals aren't too complex. I have to admit, I wasn't particularly fond of them at first, but as I played more and more, maybe too much more, they have definitely grown on me. I just think the visuals in Terraria have an amazing synergy with the gameplay and every other aspect of the game, and it doesn't look that bad either. I personally don't believe the game would look as good as it was if it was ultra realistic, especially considered that it would look incredibly aged if they went for that. The super stylized approach keeps Terraria timeless, and it will continue to look good for years and years to come. Some people might not enjoy the visuals of the game, but if you keep playing, you'll soon realize the genius hidden behind the 16-bit front. Just look at the parallax backgrounds. They seem like sprawling worlds in and of themselves, with a little bit of animation to make them feel alive. It really brings the world of Terraria to life, and makes the world feel even more expansive than it already is. Relogic has also nailed the art style incredibly well. If you look at the original Terraria, the difference is night and day. You can really tell how the art style has evolved and eventually perfected. It would be hard-pressed to find a game that does its art style better than Terraria. The textures work, the effects work, the items work, everything just works. It is surprising that even though there are nearly 4,000 items in the game, they all feel consistent and as if they are from the same world. The effects in this game are amazing. I love all the small details they put in the game, such as glowing lanterns that fly in the background the first time you kill a boss. Not to mention all the unique effects a lot of the items have. I mean, just look at the shadow dodge buff you can get from the hollowed armor set. You can't tell me that isn't cool. Pretty much all of the animations and effects sell the item's purpose, such as a light sword that shoots magical projectiles, or a yo-yo that spews out tracking projectiles. These animations and effects mixed with the sound design make every item satisfying to use, and although simple, it still looks great. This game looks great, and even if it doesn't quite appeal to you at first, keep going, see if you can learn to appreciate it, because I certainly did. Exploration in this game is pretty amazing. It seems like each world is handcrafted despite being automatically generated. The world spawn is in the center, with progressively harder biomes lurking the further you go out. If you go to one side of the world, you'll have a dangerous dungeon with powerful skeletons, and on the other, you'll have a jungle full of enemies that can poison you and deal a hefty amount of damage on top of that. And at the bottom of the world is Hell, the final frontier, full of demons, lava creatures, and the like. Because of this random generation, you never know what you might find in this world. but you can still have a vague idea of what's to come. It keeps the game fresh and it keeps me coming back to play through the game once more. There are always new items and secrets to uncover in the world of Terraria, and despite all my time in the game, I'm still finding new things I had no clue even existed. Terraria has the best implementation of mining I've ever seen. It is simply enjoyable to go spelunking. On your journey downward to the underworld, you will find a plethora of ores that can all be crafted into their own sets of armor and tools. Due to the game being 2D, you can see when you're getting close to them, which takes away some of the tedium of mining. But wait, you may be thinking, that just seems like Minecraft's mining system, but in 2D. So may I introduce you to underground biomes. It was such a good idea that even Mojang is adding the feature to its game now. These naturally spawning biomes all have unique purposes and reasons to exist. Even the more lackluster biomes have unique mobs with their own set of drops. While you're exploring these biomes, you might notice the abundance of underground structures. These might be small houses with a chest of goodies inside, a shrine to an enchanted sword, or even a boulder trap. There's so much diversity in the underground that it keeps you engaged in the gameplay, with the deeper you go, the more treacherous enemies you run into, but also the possibility of greater loot. This makes the normally tedious task of mining from other games, and turns it into an actually fun game of its own. But wait, there's more. Have you ever heard of something called a Spelunker Potion? Well, let me just tell you, they're extraordinary. These potions are simple to craft and highlights all valuable resources around you, whether that be ore, chests, or even life crystals. This makes the task of mining even more enjoyable, and speeds it up by quite a large margin. I enjoy exploring Terraria's underground despite the fact that I've seen it all before, and seeing how you spent a lot of your playthrough in the underground. It is a wonder that Relogic was able to make exploring and mining so much more fun than it could have been. I feel like I need to say this, because there seems to be a common misconception about building in this game. Yes, you can still be creative when building in this game, although you have only 2 dimensions to work with. So many tools to work with, it almost doesn't matter. I mean, just look at the absurd things people have already done in this game. There's certainly no limit to what you can do. There's so many items that are made for decoration, not to mention that you can paint every block and wall as well as hammering every block and platform into different states. To say you are able to express your creativity would be an understatement. There's a limitless amount of imagination to be had with this game's building system, even though it is limited to 2 dimensions. Still not convinced? Then just build your own 3rd dimension. If you enjoy building, then this game will certainly not let you down. The progression in this game is one of my favorite aspects about it. Each point of the game perfectly flows into the next, and you are always given clues as to where to go next. You are always finding new weapons, armors, and accessories to add to your arsenal of zany items. And as you grow in strength, so do your enemies. The game slowly teaches you to improve by making each fight just a little bit harder. This is perfect for new players because it teaches them the fundamentals of movement and combat without frustrating them too much. Just take the first 2 bosses for example. Visually and functionally, they are scaled up versions of normal enemies. The King Slime is a big slime, and the Eye of Cthulhu is a big demon eye. It takes encounters that you have already had multiple times at this point, and makes them a bit different as to not be repetitive. The King Slime can teleport to you when you get too far away, and the Eye of Cthulhu can spawn smaller enemies to attack you in the middle of the fight. The boss design is really well done in this game, and they truly are the stars of the show. The best part is, the further you go into the game, the better and better they get. You go from scaled up enemies to massive butterflies that send damaging light all over the screen. Something I love about the boss design as well is that the player can choose the difficulty of the fight. And no, I'm not just talking about normal, expert, and master mode. You can choose the difficulty of the fight by trying to get the best gear you can and make an arena. I can tell you that the Wall of Flesh fight is at least 10 times harder without making an arena beforehand. When you do this, it feels like you didn't just lower down a difficulty knob. It feels like you solved the puzzle that the game designers laid out for you. It doesn't feel like they held your hand through the fight. It feels like you outsmarted the fight completely. This is where the sandbox aspect really shines, and it makes the game feel extremely unique. Just take Minecraft for example. Although you can build an arena for the fight, it is almost never worth the time. To build an arena for the 2 bosses, the most you will ever do is dig a tunnel for the Wither underground to make sure it won't run away. and the Ender Dragon just straight up deletes the blocks you try to place. You always fight them in the same way every time with minor differences between. Terraria just does sandbox boss design better than any other game, and overall has better bosses than most games out there. But of course there is a problem with this. Once you beat the final boss of the game, and you get the best gear, there isn't really anywhere to go. You may spend 20 hours on a playthrough, and you will always have a goal in mind on what to do next. So when that's gone, you don't really have anywhere to go from there. For most people, I think it is. Comparing it to Minecraft again, you can get a full diamond set within about an hour in that game. And with that, you can easily beat both the bosses, but that isn't really the point of the game. In Minecraft, you have to set your own goals, and in Terraria, you are given a list of bosses and told to go get them. But I don't think that this is a bad thing. As I said, the progression is so well designed, with the difficulty curve matching up perfectly with the player's skill increasing. It always feels like you're faced with the challenge. This is probably the reason I have so many more Terraria worlds than Minecraft worlds. In Minecraft, you really only need one playthrough because not much changes between them. While in Terraria, each playthrough feels unique to itself and different from all the other ones. This brings me to the next topic of replayability. This game is insanely replayable. On top of there being around 4,000 items in the game, there are also 4 unique classes to choose from, with each offering vastly different experiences. You have Mage, which focuses on saving mana for when you can do huge bursts of damage. You have Ranger, which focuses on grinding for holy arrows and glorified bullets, and then holding down left click on the mouse. Trust me, it's a lot more fun than it sounds. You have Melee, which is usually the tank class with the highest defense, which focuses on getting up close and personal with the enemy. And finally you have Summoner, which focuses on hitting the enemy with a whip, letting your summons attack the enemy, then running away because you'll probably die into his due to your pitiful defense. Each of these has a ton of accessories and armor sets unique to them, and even their own buff potions to help each class. You can easily get 4 playthroughs of the game just by playing a different class each time. Not to mention how many options you have for each class at each point in the game. I swear, it feels like I end up using different items and accessories each time I play through the game, even when I'm using the same class. There are just so many options that it avoids getting repetitive, and only a small few are presented to you at each point of the game, so you avoid getting overwhelmed by the sheer amount of content in this game. There are also 2 different world evils you get to choose when creating a world, Crimson and Corruption. Each of these is a different biome with different early game bosses and different hard mode materials. Each world evil feels different, and it's just another thing to look forward to experiencing when replaying the game. Another thing that is worth replaying the game for is multiplayer. It is a completely different experience when replaying the game with a buddy or a few. And although every game is good with friends, Terraria is especially good with friends. The bosses do scale when playing in multiplayer, but I would say it's a lot easier because of the fact that you can respawn and the boss won't go away as long as there's at least one player alive. There's just so much content in this game, it will be long before you ever get bored of it. Certainly a game you wouldn't want to forget on a deserted island. That isn't even taking into account mods. There's practically an endless supply of content with them, and the modding scene for the game is still very active till this day. There's even a mod I consider to be a masterpiece in and of itself. Also, did I mention the game is only $10? Well, it's $10 on Steam, so if you're on the fence about it, take the plunge, you won't be disappointed. I've talked about the absurd amount of items, but what exactly do they do? Well, there's quite a large variety, so get strapped in. You have your equipment. These are your pets, light pets, hooks, mounts, and minecarts. Next, you have your armors, accessories, and vanity. You are able to put dyes to change the appearance on each of these things. And yes, that does mean you can have a rainbow-colored mushroom minecart. Finally, you have your consumables, tools, decorations, blocks, and weapons. And there are even subclasses of many of these categories. There's just so much content in the game that we've spent hours just digging through the Terraria wiki, looking at all the cool stuff in the game. I want to point out something as well. The consumables are really well done in this game. The potions give a vast range of buffs, whether that be to combat, movement, mining, or even building. While they aren't exactly easy to get, they aren't hard either. And as long as you spend a little time setting up a flower garden and fishing, then they are pretty simple to make. In most games, I just save potions at the bottom of my inventory, waiting for a good time to use them. But in Terraria, I drink so many potions that the Terrarian probably has rainbow urine. I use them because I know if I run out, I can just make more pretty easily, as well as the potions being pretty powerful. If you build up the infrastructure to make potions easily, then it doesn't hurt to use a few. There's a potion to buff pretty much everything imaginable in the game, and if you have a goal, you can probably use a potion to help get it done faster. There are a variety of normal enemies in this game, but none really stand out, other than the Diabolist. I have a strong distaste for that thing. But most of them seem like filler compared to the incredible boss fights. You fight them all in mostly the same way, so there isn't much difference between them. But I do not think that's a bad thing at all. There's so many of them with unique drops that it's actually worth hunting some of these enemies down on their own. This isn't to say that the enemies have no differences at all though. A lot of them can apply their own debuffs or attack you in its own way. You are always on your toes wherever you are in the world. There's so many biomes too, it seems like you can almost always find a new enemy to fight, and you may just be surprised at what it does. Now that I think about it, saying that none of the enemies stand out is kind of a lie. You have all the enemies like mimics, nymphs, and fire imps that I'm sure every Terraria player could tell you about. What I really meant to say was that compared to the rest of the game, which is extraordinary, the enemies are just really, really good. And honestly, I couldn't tell you a single way I would improve them, but they aren't what you remember about the game when looking back on it. Next, I want to talk to you about the townsfolk NPCs. I really love what they did to the townsfolk in the 1.4 update. You can now buy pylons that allow you to teleport to other towns set up in your world as long as there are at least 2 townsfolk living near it. But there's a catch. The NPCs have to be happy to sell a pylon. This encourages players to build bases all over the world to suit each of the interests of the townsfolk. Before 1.4, people would mostly just make a base at spawn and keep building more and more housing to shelter their townsfolk. I think this change is a great addition because it gives you a reason to explore the other biomes and make bases there, and who knows, you might even want to build in a different style to accommodate the rest of the biome. That's what I did, and I was really satisfied with the results. On top of that, you don't have to run through your entire world, you can just teleport to one of the towns you set up. This idea was a stroke of genius by Relogic, and is honestly one of the best changes they have made to their game. The townsfolk themselves are pretty cool to have around too. They all have their own personalities that you probably won't notice because you're too busy spending 20 gold to get that reforge. I love you, Goblin Tinker, but why do you have to do this? Each of the townsfolk have their own function, catered to what you think they might have. For example, the golfer sells golf stuff. Who would have thought? Some townsfolk do other things, however, such as the angler gives you a fishing quest. These mostly require you to go to different biomes around the world and fish until you get the certain quest fish he's asking for. In exchange for completing this quest, you'll get some sort of reward, ranging from, hey, that's pretty cool, and others to, I wasted my time to get this? There's even a townsfolk that lets you buy ale. But more importantly, he lets you set up a wave-based tower defense game inside Terraria, with the rewards being pretty awesome. The currency and merchants are quite well done, and they aren't intrusive to the game, and you by no means need to get them, but they are certainly quite helpful, and can be a gateway to some pretty cool stuff. My biggest negative with this game is Master Mode. They added this mode in 1.4. All it is a stat change that lets everything be able to 3-shot you, and it makes the bosses more healthy than a vegan mom that does aerobics every Tuesday and Thursday. It came as a big letdown to me because of how good Terraria's expert mode is. Don't get me wrong, you can still have fun with it because the boss fights are just so well designed, but it can be pretty annoying when a bat taps you on the shoulder and does a quarter of your health. I don't really feel like the game was designed for these type of stat changes. It just pushes it to the extreme. The reason why expert mode works so well is because along with the stat changes, they made most of the AI for all the bosses different. These changes made the fights actually harder and not just do more damage. This made it so that the challenge was more genuine, and it actually feels like it was your fault when you died. In Master Mode, there's so many moments why you just think, why did I die there? Honestly though, if you are looking for a challenge, then Master Mode can still be pretty fun. I just see Expert Mode as the best way to experience the game. But one of my biggest complaints with the game is a difficulty mode that doesn't gatekeep any useful content, then I think you have a pretty solid game on your hands. But side note, the pets from Masterwood are actually pretty amazing. This game has amazing sound and visual design with outstanding gameplay. There's so much content with these amazing boss fights, replayability, and perfectly executed sandbox elements that, for $10, is an absolute must-have game. There's a reason that so many people around the world enjoy this game, because Terraria is just that good, a masterpiece even. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.